U.S. Army Apache helicopter recently went down.
Right.
I mean, it is the ultimate butterfly effect, just mapped out in real time. We are literally looking at a situation where localized tactical maneuvers are directly dictating global macroeconomic realities.
It's wild. But welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, we're taking a massive stack of reporting surrounding this recent helicopter crash near the Strait of Hormuz.
Along with the deteriorating regional ceasefire, obviously.
Yeah, and those frantic diplomatic negotiations happening behind closed doors. So, our mission today is to take all these fast-moving, highly charged geopolitical sources and synthesize them into a clear timeline.
Right. To help you understand how one incident connects to everything else.
Exactly. We want to map the exact mechanics of how a military incident in a really tense maritime choke point just cascades outward, how it stalls international negotiations, bottles up global crude oil shipments, and ultimately hits your wallet.
And we should say up front, we are dealing with a really dense web of source material today. I mean, we have combat reports, diplomatic statements, economic data.
Oh yeah, it's a lot.
And with highly charged sources like this, it's not our job to take a side. We are simply here to lay out the facts, the demands, and the events exactly as the reporting presents them.
Right, just pulling apart the structural forces at play. So you might have seen the headlines about a helicopter going down, but to understand what it actually means, we have to trace the ripple effects. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the immediate spark. The New York Times was actually the first to break the report that a U.S. Army Apache attack helicopter crashed near the strategic Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
And the circumstances were initially described as just, well, entirely unclear.
Which is terrifying in that region.
Yeah, exactly. But what stood out to me wasn't just the crash itself, it was the immediate aftermath. Central Command and the Defense Department just went completely dark.
Total radio silence.
Yeah. They did not initially respond to requests for comment from the Associated Press. So, if the circumstances of the crash are unclear, how does the presence of these heavily armed Apaches set the stage for a powder keg environment?
Well, that's a really crucial observation because when an asset like an Apache goes down in contested territory, I mean, the immediate fear on the command level is miscalculation.
Right, like an accident being taken as an attack.
Exactly. If the opposing side believes the crash was actually a hostile engagement, or, if Allied forces misread a mechanical failure as a shootdown, the escalation ladder gets climbed very, very quickly.
Oh, wow. So the silence is intentional.
Oh, absolutely. The silence is a quarantine on information while they assess whether they are dealing with a tragic accident or, the opening salvo of a broader confrontation, especially since Iran has effectively closed that waterway during the war.
Which makes the eventual confirmation so interesting because it didn't come from some sterile Pentagon press briefing.
No, it definitely didn't.
It came from President Trump, and he was speaking to journalists on the tarmac at JFK Airport literally right after he finished watching the NBA Finals on a Monday night.
Right, just stepped right up to the microphone.
Yeah. He acknowledged the crash, but he immediately de-escalated the human element. He stated, quote, "The pilots are fine. Yeah, nobody injured. We are going to issue a report tomorrow, but the pilots are fine."
And that is so strategic.
Sure.
By immediately confirming the survival of the crew, the administration removes the most visceral trigger for public demands for retaliation.
Because if people die, the public wants a response.
Exactly. If you have casualties, the political pressure to respond militarily becomes overwhelming. So by neutralizing that element, the focus shifts back to the broader strategic environment. And I mean, let's be clear, that environment is incredibly hostile.
Yeah, let's break down that hostility, because relying on Apaches for maritime interdiction over the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, that is an inherently aggressive posture.
Oh, for sure. These aren't surveillance drones. We're talking about heavily armed attack assets.
Right. The reporting details that these helicopters are actively enforcing a blockade on Iranian crude oil shipments and tankers, basically trying to squeeze Tehran into a deal.
And at the same time, the United Arab Emirates is using these exact same platforms to shoot down incoming Iranian drones.
It's crazy. You have this massive concentration of firepower hovering over one of the most vital, narrow shipping lanes on Earth.
And like I mentioned, that shipping lane is effectively closed by Iran right now due to the ongoing war. So just map that out tactically for a second. You have a physically blockaded, heavily contested waterway. You have U.S. and allied attack helicopters constantly sweeping the area to enforce a parallel embargo on oil shipments.
Just a total bottleneck.
Right, so every radar ping, every mechanical failure, every sudden change in altitude, it all happens in an environment where literally everyone has their finger on the trigger.
The margin for error is just zero.
Effectively zero, yeah.
Well, I want to challenge the way we're looking at the timeline here a bit, because this crash didn't happen on a quiet day. It didn't happen in a period of relative calm.
No, definitely not.
It happened exactly as a fragile piece was already fracturing. The sources point out that just the day before this helicopter went down, Iran and Israel actually exchanged fire.
Right, which was a massive deal.
Yeah, the sources explicitly highlight that exchange as the biggest blow yet to the straining April ceasefire.
And that ceasefire feels like trying to balance a house of cards on the deck of a ship in a storm, honestly.
That is a perfect analogy, because to understand the fragility, we have to look back to February 28th.
Right, the real flashpoint.
Yeah, that was the start of this wider war when the US and Israel initially struck Iran. The April agreement was supposed to cap that escalation, but, I mean, a ceasefire isn't a magical pause button.
No, it's a highly dynamic, negotiated freeze.
Yeah.
And it requires constant maintenance. So when Iran and Israel resume direct fire, it signals that the underlying deterrents keeping that freeze in place are just completely dissolving.
And as those deterrents dissolve, we are seeing the conflict morph and bleed into secondary arenas.
What's fascinating here is how the core conflict just spreads geographically.
Exactly. Because while everyone is focused on the airspace over Hormuz, Israel is simultaneously intensifying and expanding a major military campaign in Lebanon.
Specifically targeting the Iranian-backed militia, Hezbollah.
Right. But the sources highlight a very specific tactical shift in this campaign regarding the southern Lebanese port city of Tyre. And it's honestly alarming.
Yeah, it really complicates the broader U.S.-Iran dynamic. We're talking about the displacement dynamics in Tyre's Christian quarter specifically. Because for the past 2 weeks, as these destructive airstrikes have just hammered the Mediterranean coastal areas, the Christian neighborhood had largely been spared.
So naturally, it became a perceived safe haven.
Exactly. The reporting notes that many Lebanese Shiite Muslims fled into those exact Christian areas to escape the bombardment.
But that sanctuary status didn't last at all. Israel issued sweeping evacuation warnings for Tyre, and they explicitly included that Christian neighborhood.
And their stated rationale was that they believed Hezbollah members were actively hiding among the fleeing Shiite civilians.
Which creates an impossible sociological and tactical nightmare.
It perfectly illustrates the brutal mechanics of asymmetric urban warfare. I mean, you have a militant force that doesn't operate from clearly defined military bases. You know, they integrate into civilian infrastructure.
So when civilians displace to avoid strikes, the militants just displace with them.
Exactly. The operational challenge for a conventional military is that distinguishing between a fleeing non-combatant and a militant seeking cover becomes nearly impossible from the air.
And the response from the Lebanese side is what really caught my attention in the sources. The Lebanese army actually deployed units directly into that Christian district of Tyre.
Right, but not to fight.
No. They didn't deploy to engage Israel. They deployed to establish a visible, verifiable presence to prove that Hezbollah had no armed footprint in that specific area.
Just a desperate de-escalation tactic.
Yeah, they were trying to physically occupy the space to prove a negative to a foreign power.
They are essentially saying, hey, we are here, we control the streets, therefore Hezbollah does not. So there is no need to strike.
But it completely failed to change the momentum.
Really?
Yeah. The Israeli military's Arabic language spokesperson, Avichai Adrei, posted shortly after on X, formerly Twitter, that the military will, quote, soon act against terrorist activities in the neighborhood.
Wow. So despite the deployment, the strikes were still on the table.
Exactly. It feels like the diplomatic and military tracks are just completely divorced from each other right now.
Oh, completely.
You have localized tactical escalations in Lebanon, direct fire between Israel and Iran, a downed Apache over a closed strait, and yet, amid all of this, the rhetoric coming out of the U.S. regarding negotiations is stunningly optimistic.
Yeah, that is the glaring paradox in the source material. While the military situation escalates, diplomatic channels are just desperately trying to freeze the conflict.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because despite the physical reality of the battlefield fracturing, President Trump expressed immense confidence.
He really did.
He told reporters he believes there is a, quote, good chance of a very, very good, strong, powerful deal in just 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days.
I know. We have Trump predicting a deal in days, yet the core demands are polar opposites. How do we square that circle? Because you don't solve an entrenched, multivariable geopolitical hostage negotiation over nuclear material in 48 hours.
Especially when the regional actors are actively shooting at each other.
Right. So what is the actual mechanic driving this renewed optimism?
Well, the optimism seems to be rooted less in a sudden diplomatic breakthrough and more in a raw, pragmatic calculation of the alternatives.
Okay, explain that.
The sources detail Trump's rationale against pursuing further military escalation. He actually stated, quote, "If we go and bomb, which we can do very easily if we want, and we spend another 2 or 3 weeks bombing, they'll have nothing left whatsoever. But you won't have the strait open for months."
Oh, wow.
And he followed that by acknowledging the heavy human cost, noting that a lot of people would be killed, which he stated he doesn't want to do.
So it's a leverage calculation.
Exactly. The U.S. obviously possesses the capability to systematically dismantle Iranian infrastructure from the air. But exercising that capability basically guarantees the Strait of Hormuz remains violently closed for the foreseeable future.
Which wrecks the global economy.
Right. The military option destroys the very economic stability the U.S. is trying to secure. So the chaotic option is largely off the table if the primary objective is normalizing global trade.
That hard reality forces both sides to rely entirely on mediation, and the reporting indicates that this mediation effort is being led predominantly by Pakistan.
Which puts Pakistan in an incredibly delicate position.
To say the least. They are trying to bridge a canyon between two completely intractable positions. So let's look at the massive barriers here, these hardline positions.
Yeah, let's map out the leverage each side holds.
Okay, so the primary U.S. demand is the complete disposal of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium.
Right.
Now, this is an active material, just to be clear. The sources note this uranium is believed to be entombed in the country following the heavy American airstrikes during the 12-day war back in 2025.
But, and this is key, entombed does not mean eliminated.
Okay, what's the difference in this context?
It means the material is structurally buried or temporarily neutralized, sure, but the physical capability still exists. And in nuclear diplomacy, latent capability is just as potent a bargaining chip as an active weapon.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, as long as that highly enriched uranium exists within Iran's borders, the West views it as an unacceptable existential risk. The U.S. requires its complete, verifiable removal to even consider long-term normalization.
Iran's counter-demand makes that virtually impossible.
Exactly. They outright refuse to touch the uranium stockpile until they receive immediate sanctions relief and the release of their frozen financial assets.
And they want this before any final agreement is signed.
Right. They want the cash and the economic freedom up front.
Which Trump has explicitly rejected. So you have the U.S. demanding physical destruction of nuclear assets first, and Iran demanding digital transfers of billions of dollars first. It is a total deadlock.
It is a standoff defined by asymmetric leverage. Neither side is acting irrationally, They are simply maximizing the specific tools they possess.
Right.
The U.S. is utilizing the Apache-led military blockade as its primary bargaining chip. It's a physical throttle on Iran's economy. By choking off the crude oil shipments, they are trying to starve Tehran into accepting the uranium disposal without those upfront concessions.
And Iran's leverage is time and geography.
Bingo.
They are holding the entombed uranium as a latent threat, but more immediately, they are utilizing their ability to keep the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed to commercial traffic.
Because they know that a prolonged closure doesn't just hurt them. It inflicts massive economic pain on the United States and the rest of the world.
Which brings us right back to the mechanism we introduced at the very beginning of this deep dive.
The grocery store.
Yes. So what does this all mean for you? How does a standoff over entombed uranium and frozen assets in a negotiation room in Pakistan dictate the price of your groceries?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a direct chain of cause and effect driven by the blockade.
Let's trace that chain. The sources explicitly state that since the war initiated with those February 28 strikes, the global economy has been severely shaken.
Unsurprisingly.
Right. And the most immediate measurable impact has been a sharp spike in global energy costs. And it's not a mystery why. You have the U.S. military actively targeting Iranian crude shipments and tankers, while Iran keeps the broader waterway closed.
You have effectively bottlenecked one of the primary arteries of global energy. The Strait of Hormuz is basically the world economic jugular vein.
That's a great way to put it. When it gets pinched by blockades and closed waters, the lack of oil shipments causes a blood pressure spike that reaches every local grocery store aisle.
Exactly. The global supply chain operates on incredibly tight margins. It is a highly optimized interlocking system. So when you suddenly constrict the flow of millions of barrels of crude oil, the global supply drops while demand remains constant or even rises.
So the raw cost of fuel just skyrockets globally.
Right, and fuel is the foundational cost of literally everything else.
Right, because if the cost of maritime diesel goes up, it costs more for a cargo ship to cross the ocean.
Exactly, and that increased shipping cost is passed on to the manufacturer.
Who passes it on to the logistics company driving the 18-wheeler?
Who passes it on to the regional distribution center?
Who passes it on to your local supermarket?
Yep. The sources highlight that this specific dynamic has made basic necessities worldwide, particularly food, significantly more expensive.
It's just wild how the micro creates the macro. A stalled negotiation over frozen assets creates a prolonged blockade on crude shipments, which ultimately results in you paying more for dinner.
It is a profound demonstration of structural vulnerability. The global economy is so hyper-connected that geopolitical muddy waters are not abstract at all. They are fundamentally tied to domestic inflation.
It really makes you look at the headlines completely differently. When you see a breaking news alert about an Apache helicopter going down under unclear circumstances near a contested strait, it's not just a far-off military brief.
No, it's an event that threatens to disrupt the fragile economic equilibrium we all rely on. The timeline is everything.
It really is. So let's quickly recap the journey we've taken through these sources today.
Sounds good.
We started with the immediate tactical reality, right? A downed U.S. Army attack helicopter enforcing a blockade over a closed, highly militarized Strait of Hormuz.
Met with strategic silence from the Pentagon before being confirmed by the president.
Exactly. Then we moved through how that incident occurred against the backdrop of a disintegrating April ceasefire.
Right, marked by direct fire between Israel and Iran and the chaotic expansion of the conflict into Lebanese civilian centers like Tyre, creating those impossible displacement scenarios.
From there, we looked at the diplomatic deadlock. Mediators in Pakistan attempting to reconcile a U.S. demand for the disposal of entombed uranium from the 2025 war with an Iranian demand for upfront sanctions relief.
And finally, we tracked how that specific diplomatic failure guarantees the continuation of the military blockade, which bottlenecks global crude oil shipments and drives up the cost of global energy and food supplies.
And again, we are merely observers here, extracting the facts from the source text. We leave the politics to the politicians. But it's a stark reminder that in our current era, geography is still destiny.
Yeah, global trade is entirely dependent on safe passage through a handful of narrow, vulnerable choke points.
Absolutely.
Which, leaves us with a critical structural question to consider.
Okay, what's that?
Well, building on these sources, think about this. If the mediators in Pakistan somehow manage to thread the needle, right? If they strike a deal that temporarily opens the strait and pauses this specific blockade, does that actually solve the underlying problem? Or does this entire weeks-long crisis expose a permanent, unfixable vulnerability in our modern world? If a single localized diplomatic standoff and a few weeks of stubbornness are all it takes to fundamentally threaten the global food and energy supply, how resilient is the global economy, really?
Man, that is a sobering thought. We built a machine that spans the entire globe, but we left the most critical gears exposed to the elements.
Basically, yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this helped connect the dots for you, and as always, keep questioning the headlines.
For more breaking news and daily updates, follow Minute Wire. Like, share, and subscribe to stay informed.